Hey, welcome to the Kevin Duragi Show. I'm your host, Kevin Duragi. Today, our guest is Bryan Schroeder. We will get to Bryan here in a second. But guys, if you haven't, go back, listen to the monologues, which is the first 5 that we put out. As we are starting the 2025 season here, just want to let you know our focus this year is Dream Forge Finish. If you haven't listened to episode 30, go back and listen to that now. But we really want to find out how people are dreaming, right? Becoming who it is that they want to be, forging, doing that personal work, and finishing what it is that they started. So guys, let's get started this year right now together. Here we go. Bryan, as I slam the bam, it was a great way to start it. Bryan, you are our first guest this year. You're just an incredible man. So you have done these amazing things with your business, right, in real estate, but more than that, you really are a great human, and the way that you have shaped with your leadership the real estate landscape here in St. Louis, Missouri. All that said, let's rewind and find out, how did you get started? Are you a St. Louis native, or?
Grew up on a farm in northern Iowa, Garner, Iowa.
That's a place where a lot of people
I do run into a lot of Iowans here, which is amazing to me. And it's just because I'm from there. I run it, I notice them, but you probably don't. But
so is this farm? So what? Soy and wheat, or
corn and beans?
Actually,
my dad has a business that sells grain equipment. So we didn't actually farm ourselves, but I was around farmers, and most everybody in my hometown was farmers. So, but my dad sells farm equipment. He's an entrepreneur. So that's where I got my entrepreneur bug.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, is sell the shovel, not do the digging.
Yeah.
So, oh, wonderful.
And he's 82 years old and still doing it, believe it or not. I don't know why, but he just loves it. So he keeps doing it.
Good. Well, that's awesome that you have a role model that started the entrepreneurship. Did he teach you stuff, or was it just by process of watching him?
Yeah, I would say process of watching. He's a teacher by showing you how to do things, not by telling you how to do things, I guess I would say. So I grew up in the business. I did every aspect of the business. So when I started working in the business when I was like 11 or 12 years old. One of those, that's typical on a farm. I was driving tractors and trucks around when I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 years old,
Can you still fix a carburetor?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I can't either. Never had to.
Yeah.
All right. So how does a farm boy end up in St. Louis then?
Well, I was a wrestler. Another thing about Iowa is a lot of wrestlers. It's a big state for wrestling. So I wrestled in high school, and I went to college to wrestle. I didn't really care about college, to be honest, but I went to wrestle, and because I cared about wrestling. And my first day of college, you meet with a guidance counselor or whatever, and you gotta pick a major. So for whatever reason that day, and it's interesting how certain days in your life just change the course of your life. I picked aerospace engineering. I have no idea why I picked aerospace engineering, but I did. So that day brought me to St. Louis, and obviously, it changed the course of my life. So I got an aerospace engineering degree, and then when I, interviewing, I got a job offer here at McDonnell Douglas. So I came here in January of 1991, moved to St. Louis, and been here ever since.
91. Well,
yep.
St. Louis welcomes you.
It did.
You have done well in St. Louis.
I've enjoyed St. Louis. It's a wonderful place to live.
So you came to St. Well, thank you. So you came to St. Louis. You started as an engineer. Yep. How did you go engineering to real estate? How did that transaction look?
Well, when I started at McDonnell Douglas, which is now Boeing, it was right after the Reagan buildup. And there was a lot of layoffs going on. So it was kind of a tough time in the engineering world just for that. I was there for 3 years, almost 4 years. And, I sat in a cubicle in a building that had, I was going to say, more than 1,000 engineers. And it was just cubicle after cubicle after cubicle of engineer after engineer after an engineer. And there were some people in there that were young in my age and I had a lot of fun with. But there were also a lot of people that were sitting in that cubicle that had been sitting in that cubicle for like 30 or 40 years. And I, coming up from where I grew up, there's a lot of freedom in life. There wasn't like this, it wasn't regimented, and I just am a lover of freedom. I always have been. And sitting in a cube behind a computer screen for 8 hours a day just wasn't for me. So I'd been there maybe a year or two, and I started thinking, well, this isn't my career path. I got to kind of look for something else. I was sitting on a couch one night, relatively late at night, and an infomercial comes on. Carlton Sheets. So anybody younger than I'm going to say 35 or 40 years old is going to not know who Carlton Sheets was. I don't even know if he's still alive or not. But anyway, I watched an infomercial on how to buy real estate, no money down, and I bought it. I don't know if it was like $19.99 or something like that, and it was a cassette tape. So I got the cassette tapes and I listened to them, and I got the bug. I didn't know how to become a real estate investor from those tapes, but it got me started. So anyway, I kind of started shifting my focus out of how can I get out of out of aerospace engineering? How can I get out of McDonnell Douglas and do something in the real estate field? So what I did is I didn't feel like, first thing I did is I bought a house for myself, my personal house. And I did it. I did a short sale, and this was 1993. So I think
those were popular. Right?
I think a lot of people thought short sales came around in the financial crisis, 2008, 9. No, I did my first short sale in 1993. Bought the house, moved into it, fixed it up while I lived there. Did everything myself, and I lived there for 2 years and sold it. Bought it for $60,000, put $17,000 into it, sold it for $120,000. And I was hooked.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got interested in real estate. And I'll tell you how I shifted from. I was still working at McDonnell Douglas at the time because I didn't know. I mean, I did it once, but I didn't have the belief that I could do it again. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, what step can I make? So I became a real estate appraiser. So it was relatively easy to get an appraisal license, and I did my first direct mail campaign. What I did is I mailed a letter to every real estate appraiser in the St. Louis area, just looking in the phone book, saying, "Hey, I want to get in the real estate biz." So I did a direct mail campaign. One dude called me, John LeGrand. John is an awesome mentor of mine. He called me and said, "Hey, I need some help. Come on over." So I left my engineering degree. My parents thought I was nuts. A lot of my old family around me thought I was nuts to give up my engineering career and go into real estate appraising. That sounded like a step down to most people, but that's what I did. I was an appraiser for 8 years, investing on the side, did some flips, bought some rentals, and then one day in 2002 went full-time into real estate investing. So that was kind of my transitionary period.
8 years. I didn't know you spent that long in it.
Yep, 8 years. It was good. The great part about it is, I looked at 2 or 3 homes a day for 8 years. So I got to know streets really well. I got to, when I started full-time in real estate, and I could do this to today, and you probably can too, Kevin, but you tell me a street in St. Louis, I can picture what the house looks like. What kind of houses are there, if that neighborhood has foundation issues, you know what I mean. So all those years just driving around looking at houses was super helpful for that. And I got really good at understanding what a house is worth and what affects value on houses. So that little stint as an appraiser was super helpful for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when you went full-time real estate investing, what was it that you needed to know? Did you need so much money in the bank account? Did you need a partner? Did you need?
It was the partner for me.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, for me, I didn't have enough confidence in myself. Growing a real estate business is a personal development business. And I tell you, the other thing that I did in my life is I got married, I got divorced, I had kids, got a blended marriage and raised a blended family. That's a personal growth experience too. So I have 2 major personal growth challenges in my life, but growing a business is one of them. So I didn't have the confidence in myself to go out on my own. But one day I had a friend, his name's Jim Stegermeyer. Jim and I, we're kind of friends that we kind of knew each other from McDonnell Douglas. And him and I kind of got breakfast, like, I'm going to say, every couple of months we got together, and we'd always do breakfast for whatever reason. So one day, it was November 20th of 2002. We both,
I got that day. Yeah.
There's things that you remember in your life. Those times in your life where your life just changes. This was one of those breakfasts. Jim had left McDonnell Douglas and he had become a financial advisor for Payne Weber. And then, and this was 2002. So he kind of went through the dot-com crisis and bubble, and he was kind of thinking, I want to get out of the financial planning business. And he had some rentals on the side. And then, so him and I had this mutual interest in real estate, but both of us had regular jobs. But we went to breakfast that day, and, for whatever reason, it just sparked that day. We were both at that point in our lives where we were ready to make a change. So both of us literally that day quit our jobs, and we started FasterHouse.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't call it FasterHouse at first because we weren't very smart. We called it Schroeder, Stegermeyer Associates, which is the worst freaking name for a real estate.
It's got a ring to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, that was, it was one of those, you just jump off the cliff. That's what we did. We were both in a position where we could, and not that we were either wealthy or any means, but we could both survive for, I'm going to say, 6 months without a check, which, it's not a ton of time, but it's enough time for us to have enough confidence to just jump off and do it.
I like that. You use the term jump off. My dad always taught us it's shit or get off the pot. Yeah. Same idea. Like, hey, make a decision.
Yep.
You're going to stay or you're going to go.
Yep.
I think it's funny that you said, you had a little safety net, not huge, but you had something, right? But it was the confidence. Yep. It was having somebody there with you in the journey that made it easier to transition, somebody in the same position. Now, was everything 50-50? Was this a flipping business? Was this a rental business? How did this grow? Because now you guys are one of the largest here in St. Louis. How did you transition from, I'm assuming, onesie, twosie starting off to what you are now?
Well, there's, it's interesting. You look back, for most people that see what is today, everybody thinks, well, that was super easy, quick path, but it was a long path. Like I spent 8 years as a real estate appraiser. A lot of people maybe think I was only there a year or two, but I was there 8 years. Jim and I started FasterHouse in, like I said, November 2002, and we were partners for 10 years. During the time that Jim and I were partners, we were a flipping business, and we built a portfolio of rentals. That's all we were. We weren't a big company during that.
That's all we were. We just flipped houses, bought rentals, right?
Well, and I'm going to say the first year, I think the first year maybe we did like 4 or 5 flips, and then the second year we got up to like 12, and eventually, I don't know if it took 3 or 4 years, but we were doing about 50 or 60 flips a year, and we had a team. Maybe there was 6 or 8 of us, something like that. So that's kind of, but the bigger part, the flipping business from 2002 up until when Jim and I split up in 2012, it was a relatively consistent business. I mean, you had the period of time where there was tons of people tons of competition, like there is today or has been over the last several years. That was 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then shortly after that came the financial crisis, and everything flipped, where there was maybe a transition year in there or 2 years. And then it's flipped where, it was there was no competition. It was like, I'm going to say there are a handful of people here in the St. Louis area flipping houses, where it went from maybe I don't know, I'm just wild ass guessing here, but maybe there were 100 flippers in town and went down to like 20 or 10 or something like that. So it's super easy to find deals. It just took a little while to sell them. But we made money in the flipping business, whether it was a ton of competition and houses hard to get but easy to sell. And we also made money when there was no competition. You could buy them super deep, but it was kind of hard to sell. We both ways flipping business made money. But during that 10-year period of time, Jim and I had a crazy freaking journey on the rental, building a portfolio of rentals. We started, I'll tell you the story real quick, and then we can dig in wherever you want to. But we started not knowing what the heck we're going to do. We started with the plan of, let's flip enough houses to live on, and then the next deal we get, we'll just keep it as a rental. And we did that for a couple years. Actually, we did that for like between 2002 and 2006. And we had about a portfolio of about 40 rentals in 2006. And then the market had been going up quickly, values, when I say market values had going up. And then they plateaued for like the second half of 2006 and 2007, and they started going down. But during that plateau, Jim and I had some financial troubles because it was so easy to buy a house. We always use the BRRR method, buy a house, fix it up, rent it, refinance it, get all your money back and do it again. So we built a portfolio doing that. But all of a sudden, when values stopped going up, it got harder to do that. Interest rates went up during that time too, and it got harder to cash flow houses. So we had to really look at our portfolio and go, what the hell? Our rental portfolio wasn't cash flowing. It was like, we were like having to throw money out of our flipping business to support our rental portfolio. And what happened was we didn't have any strategy on keeping our rentals. So we had rentals from Hawk Point, if you guys know where that is, way north and west, all the way down to Festus, way south, So, and we had everything from some mobile homes to like, at the time was like maybe $350,000 houses, and then we had a lot of houses like in North County that were, I'm going to say, more lower end houses that had a lot of trees. And, during that period of time, it felt like every time there was a windstorm or an ice storm, it just knocked down 5 of my trees, and it would cost, $10,000 in fixing up trees. So when we started having to feed our rentals rather than them feeding us, from the very beginning, we should have been focused on cash flow, and we weren't. We were focused on accumulating, because during that time, and similar to the last 2 years, you could just buy a house, you could hold it a few years, and it would go up $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, and it felt like you were making money just by owning houses rather than cash flowing. So anyway, then shortly after that, value, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, values go down that whole time. But what happened in North County, it happened all over the metro area, but specifically in North County, a house in Florissant that was worth, I'm going to say 140 in 2006, 3 years later, that thing's worth 70 grand or 80 grand. And you could pick them up for like 40 or 50,000. So Jim and I went through this period of time where we were really struggling financially with our rental portfolio, to where we could see a house that was worth 120 is now worth 70, and we can pick it up for 50. And it used to rent for 11 or 1200, and it still rents for 11 or 1200. So there's a cash flow opportunity. So we went all in. We went for broke. We went from 40 houses owning 40 houses in 2006 to owning 150 houses in 2012. And we solved our cash flow problem by doing it. But it was a crazy freaking ride. And, I can tell you all kinds of stories. We almost went bankrupt. I walked the halls of our house at night, because I couldn't sleep. My wife had to go back to work. She was a nurse, and she had quit her job, and then she had to go back to work. We had to do so many things to survive that period of time. But when we came out at the other end, it really just changed the trajectory of my life.
We talk about seasons of life or seasons of business. There's different times. So you went through the season of you saw the opportunity and you took it. So that's props for that, because that's a big pill to swallow, but I'm sure that caused a lot of stress.
It did.
And you basically carried it by being awake at night. And how did that work with the home life and the family and all that?
Well, it was a challenge, mostly for me. Everybody handles situations like that differently. And let me expand on that just a little bit before I answer your question there, Kevin. Between 2006 and 2010, banks just failed left and right. And we had a number of banks that we were working with, about 6 banks before the crisis. 3 of them failed. And the ones that failed, they almost took us down with them. Because we had to the government would come in and tell bank regulators, tell the banks, you got to get rid of these loans. This loan's upside down, or you got to have this borrower bring in $20,000 to pay this loan down. So what we did to survive that is we went to private lenders. And, in 2006, between 2006 and 2010, we had to raise $880,000 from family and friends to survive that downturn. So by doing that, I guess didn't even realize this, but looking back on it, Jim and I were both kind of all in people. When we decided to do something, we just did it and we just went for it. But when we started raising money from family and friends, it became like there was no quitting. You couldn't quit. You burned the boats. There was no not getting through this. So we just found whatever opportunity was available. But through that, I had a wife and we had this blended family and we had little kids at the time. Matter of fact, some of our kids were in private schools, which, that was one of the challenges that I had both my wife and I had was figuring out how to keep them in school and how not to let our business failures affect our kids. My wife was very supportive, incredibly supportive. She, like I said, she went back to work as a nurse to help us get through that period of time. I know our kids, I was one that, right or wrong, I'm just going to tell what I did. I was available to our kids, sort of. I was like, my mind was more on our business than raising our kids at the time. I'd show up at the soccer game, but I'd be thinking about the business. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I look back on that now, and I'm in a totally different space in my life. But I spent, I don't know, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 years, and our kids are all different ages. But some of our kids, that was in their high school years. Some of the kids was in their middle school years. Some of the kids were in their, kindergartenish years. But it all affected them differently, and some of them noticed it more than others. Some of them noticed that I was walking around in the middle of the night. Some of them didn't. But what happened is, for me, this was a transformational period of my life, because prior, I was I'm going to say focused on the future a lot, and during that period of time, I had to stay somewhat focused on the future, but if you thought about the future too much, all that you saw was doom and gloom. There didn't seem to be a way out. So I got really focused on just being present with the moment. And, I'd still be stressed out at times, but every morning I started a morning. You guys are probably familiar with having a morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even think of the name of that book. Is it called The Morning Miracle?
Miracle Morning.
Miracle Morning.
Yep,
Yeah.
Savers.
Yeah. So it kind of got me in that phase where I would make sure when I got out of bed in the morning that I would spend a little time, whether that's in prayer or meditation or reading. I would when I got out of bed, I'd go look in the mirror and I'd say, "How is life today?" And every morning when I said that, my kids had food. They were still in their schools. My wife was happy, she was happy every day, but her and I were doing well, So every morning I kept doing that. And I reminded myself every morning, I'm just going to get up and be present and ask myself, how is things right now? Not how's it look like things are going to be 30 days from now or 2 years from now. How are things right now? And it was always just fine, and that's what kept me going. So that was a big thing for me, just becoming more present to the moment rather than always because anxiety, stress, and fear are a future-based thing, not a present-based thing, if that makes sense.
How did your kids recognize this growth, this process?
Well, in the moment, I don't know that they did. We got the his, hers, and hers, his, and mine, or ours. So my wife had 3 kids. So Susanna and Rachel, and then Dave. Susanna and Rachel were the oldest. So they were kind of in their high school years at this time. So to a certain extent, they were kind of doing their own thing. And I think that was a good thing because they didn't really realize the stress that was happening inside the house. I think our middle kids had got it the worst, Bryson and Dave. It affected them a little bit as far as I wasn't present. I think they felt some of the anxiety and stress in the household. It affected them a little bit with their school and stuff. And then our youngest, Ashley, she was too young to really know what was going on. So she's become a real spiritual girl because I did, and Debbie did. So she's like into yoga and fitness and other stuff like that these days. She's not too much into the real estate biz.
It is kind of neat to see what the parents do ripples into their children's paths.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what I want to focus on here is you were talking about, this is your forging, right? If we're using the Dream Forge finish, this is the period that you really start becoming who it is you are today, right? And it's through the down cycles that you really do this character development. You found a book, you find a moment, right? That really is, I don't know, some people have this defining moment. I woke up and I said, I'm doing like your breakfast with Jim. Or during this process, walking through the, like, stress does stuff. And sometimes it makes you reach out or cry out or ask for help or find a book. Give me something that I can make the difference to get through this. Right? Like, there's so many people right now. We're going through our own little money cycle. I don't think we're as deep as this recession or anything like that. But people who bought in the higher points, when the bank starts going, hey, you owe us a couple more bucks, and you're buying for that couple $100 cash flow a month, and they ask for several $1,000s back, that's crushing to a lot of people. It sounds like you answer that with private lending.
I did. So there, to me, there's, I'm going to call it strategy, and then there's more of the emotional side or the inner work side, and you got to do both. I think for me, the inner work was getting very present with the moment and not worrying about the future. You still had to plan for the future. You don't have to worry about the future. Then there's the strategy side, and yes, I was very transparent with our lenders. I got to be really good friends with some of our lenders. Bank-wise and private lender-wise. And we did reach out to a lot of private lenders, and private lenders definitely got us through that period of time. And some of those guys are still private lenders to me today, mainly because they don't want to be paid off. I've been paying them interest for, 20 years now.
Let it ride,
they're happy with it.
Actually, so I want to hit this point. So you broke into the industry with Jim, right? Because fundamentally, you needed that confidence or that accountability. How was it asking your first private lender for a loan?
Well, how was it? It was, all of our private lenders were basically people that knew what we were doing. They were either family or friends. And when I say friends, a lot of my friends are in the real estate business. Some of our, I go through our list of private lenders. It was my parents, it was Jim's grandpa, it was friends of Jim's from high school, but then it was our plumber, It was our flooring guy. So there were people that knew us and believed in us.
But there's a difference with the idea of, hey, can you bail me out compared
Yes.
to here's an investment. So
Yes.
how was that? I mean, was it one of those like, Mom, Dad, I need to borrow money? Or was it
No,
like, hey, here's an opportunity, we want to capitalize?
it was the opportunity side. I think everybody knew what was going on in the world, so I think everybody knew there was risk involved, and we shared that. But we also shared our business plan, showed our proof of what we had done up to that point. We also shared, that the return that they would get, which we just paid them all 8%. It was just interest only 8%, and we guaranteed it by the company and the real estate and us personally. So I think if you're raising money from private lenders, you gotta have confidence, and you gotta be able to share the story of why they should invest in you. Which is real estate's a great story. You can secure it. With deeds and trusts and so forth, and you can guarantee it personally or with your company. So share that story, but also you got to do it with confidence, and you got to believe that you are doing a service to that lender. I believe that if you reach out to lenders without confidence, they're not going to lend to you.
Yeah. Same with sellers, same with
Yeah.
just one of those. So when do you think you found your confidence?
Well, I would have to, going today, I'm very confident, but going through that period of time raising money, I would go back and forth. I'd have to get myself psyched up in the morning to reach out to people. And when I met with people, I'd have to, get present and be focused, and because I didn't always inwardly have confidence, but I had to show it outwardly.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, for me, the way to get confidence is to, first of all, make sure that you're doing a service to people. You gotta, whatever you're selling or doing, you gotta believe in it. And I believed that we would get through the situation, and I believed that I would pay everybody back because I wasn't going to quit. The only people that really lose money in real estate is the people that quit. As long as you, especially if you got rentals, flipping business, you can lose money on a deal, but as long as you keep going, hopefully you learn from it and you do it better the next time. But in the rentals, if you think about it, 30 years from now or 20 years from now, they're going to be paid off as long as you don't keep cash out refinancing them. So, I had that belief that I wasn't going to quit. So sooner or later, because the money we were borrowing from our private lenders, it was for our rental portfolio. Because our flipping business always did okay. We always lived on our flipping business. But the rentals almost took down our flipping business during the financial crisis. That's where we needed to shore it up with the private lenders. So I had confidence that I was in this for the long haul, and I was going to pay them off, whether it took 5 years or 20 years. I wasn't going to quit. So anyway, I think my use of private lenders is different than a lot of people. A lot of people use it for flipping, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But I was using it for the rental side.
So you split with Jim, right? About 10 years later. How did that happen? What was the cause? Was it just different growth measures?
Well, Jim was a wonderful partner, and his wife Claire. Jim and Claire and my wife Debbie and I, we had a great run, but it was a challenging run. And we split up in 2012 because Jim, I think he was a little burnout on going through the process, but also at the time, for whatever reason, I was implanted with this vision, and my vision was, I wanted to have a flipping business and an education business and a real estate brokerage and a hard money lending business in my portfolio rentals. And I don't know. Have you ever just felt somewhere, I believe it comes from God. God just implanted a vision in me, and I just had to do it. And I was talking to Jim about it, and Jim was like, holy shit, I don't even know if I want to keep flipping in rentals, So we just kind of had different visions, different life points in life. So I ended up buying him out. Looking back on it, it was a challenge because we still had all those private lenders. The flipping business was easy. It was the buying him out of the rentals. Basically, he just took back a note. So I had the rentals, I had all the bank notes, I had all the private lenders, all those notes, and then Jim took back a note behind all that. So I was all in. He was just relying on me to be successful to get paid back someday.
Oh my gosh.
But at the time, I just had to do it. It was just one of those things I had to do. In 2012 it became a blessing because in 2012 was basically the bottom of the market, and real estate values just have gone up ever since. So I ended up getting the better end of the deal if you look back on it from today.
With a longer vision, of course.
With a longer vision, exactly. But anyway, that was kind of the buyout, and then I just had this vision of growing businesses, and I talk about this. For me, there was that 10-year path, and during that path, I became a really good real estate investor. I knew how to flip houses really well, and I knew how to build a good portfolio of rentals. The journey I was embarking on was how to take that knowledge and become a business owner and grow a business, which is a totally different skill set than a real estate investor. So I spent the next few years just studying how to become an awesome business owner, leadership, vision, creating a culture, building a team that wants to come to work there, that type of thing. So I did that, and then I had the strategy, and the strategy was just implanted in me. I knew what to do. And I followed other people that came before me. I knew the Bellington guys really well. Bellington obviously ended badly, but they were some smart dudes. They had a good plan. So I copied some of their stuff. Other people in town and around the country. I've learned from other people, and I'm pretty good at seeing what works and just copying it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had this vision of growing these 5 different businesses that are all very related, all working around real estate, and just got focused on studying how to grow a business. Grew it. I grew really nicely, and then that was 2012 to 2017. 2017, we had all these businesses. They were all going well, and I wanted to create more freedom in my life. So I went out and I found partners for each one of the businesses. And like Lucas Walls, the flipping business, Sam Prim with the education business, Matt Becker with Magnolia Real Estate, the traditional brokers. Those are all incredibly awesome guys. I was so blessed to find all those guys. My daughter Suzanne for the hard money lending business. Her and I are still partners. I've sold my partnership in the other 3 businesses. But it was just a fun ride. It was just such a great ride. So, I've enjoyed the whole thing. Becoming a real estate investor, I've enjoyed growing a business. I've enjoyed becoming a leader. I've enjoyed bringing in partners and selling off my businesses. So it's just all fun. And I tell people this: if it's not fun, then don't do it. That's been a motto for me for like the last, I don't know, say 15 years or so. It's always about, for me, I like projects more than I like, that's why I sold my businesses, because, I kind of wanted to do another project, So anyway, it's kind of been my journey.
So in this process, I mean, you talk about if it's not fun, don't do it. I don't like paying taxes, but I still do it.
That's right.
There's a process there.
Yeah.
But how did you have a mentor or some help in the building a business side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had mentors in every aspect of the business. If you go back to just the real estate, it started with Carlton Sheets, then it was Vina Jones Cox. You know Vina?
Yeah.
Vina was awesome. She taught me the wholesaling business. And then, Robert Kiyosaki,
Yep.
I didn't know him personally, but just through his books and stuff. But then on the business side, for me, it was, a lot of people are like amazed when I say this, but it was Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey's got a side of his business called Entre Leadership. You familiar with it? He teaches other business owners how to grow a business just like he built his business. Dave's got his financial planning side and with his baby steps, which some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. He's obviously a no leverage guy, which I believe in leverage, as long as it's done right. So I don't necessarily agree with Dave about that side, but as far as growing a business, he's an awesome teacher of that. And then Patrick Lencioni was another big one. He's all about company culture, creating a great culture. So anyway, and then so those guys I didn't know personally super well, but I went to their courses and stuff, and then in the St. Louis area, one of the beautiful things about real estate investing is one of our core values was a mindset of abundance. It still is to this day, and I have learned so much from my competition because I don't view a competition as competition. Like Ryan Wessels and Jim Manning and Jonathan Rankin, Keith Imken and John Nixon, all those guys, basically my biggest competition over the last 20 years. I know them all super well, and we're all friends, and we all learn from each other. It's very counterintuitive. When I tell people that my competition are my best friends and we are transparent with each other, they think, how does that work? But it works in the real estate world. Have you witnessed that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, think about it. It's a small world here.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be around a while, like you could have that fight. But who was it? Simon Sinek wrote that book, Worthy Rivals.
Okay.
Where to become a better entrepreneur, better leader, you actually need a competitor, right?
Yes.
You need somebody to become better. Iron sharpens iron.
Yep.
Just like, can you have a superhero without a supervillain? Like that, You kind of need both people to kind of get better in the process. So It's funny you mentioned all those names because I was told that you have kind of this, what's a good word for it? A local mastermind where you guys are almost guardians of the real estate integrity of St. Louis. I don't know the right, what is that? What's the word? It starts with an I. I think it's an I. The secret group that manages everything behind the scenes. Yeah. What's that called? No. Wrong.
I don't know.
Come on, guys. We're going to cut all this out.
Yeah.
I
gotta Google it. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but
just skip it. But you have this unofficial like guardians of St. Louis real estate integrity. How did that start up?
Well, I have a couple masterminds that I do, and they're all unpaid ones. I don't charge for any of them, and they're all kind of equals, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but so me and Ryan Wessels and Keith Imken and Mark Rubin have one. We call it the Old Timers Mastermind, where we just we've been around for forever. We just kind of get together, make sure we're keeping up with each other and what's going on in the world. And then how it started is I was getting together with all of them individually for breakfast. So we just decided to get together. And, before that, I'll actually go back before that. If you go back I'm going to go back like 15, 20 years. Me and Sean McCloskey and Jeremy Velocic and Keith Imken and John Nixon and which is all, that's all the major competitors back during the day. Bob DeClue was part of it. We had a mastermind. We'd get together. We got together at Uncle Bill's every Tuesday morning for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Anyway, that's just the culture that we have here in St. Louis real estate, at least the part that I'm involved in. I still run a mastermind today. I call it I have my mastermind that I do with the old timers, and I also have a mastermind that I do with what I'll call the next generation. I think we got 22 or 23 people in that right now. And in the new world, we used to always get together at Uncle Bill's for breakfast. In the new world, we just get together on Zoom every Friday morning online, which I love because I can just roll, be there in my pajamas.
Get your own coffee, right?
Yeah. And I can be anywhere in the world, often I'm in Sedona when I'm on that call. But anyway, we just, it's all about keeping the integrity and thinking, it's a go-giver mentality. I'm a believer there's enough real estate in the St. Louis area for us, and if you expand upon that, the world, there's enough for everybody that's interested in real estate. So we all learn from each other and we all help each other.
So in your process, how much do you stick to one lane? How much do you like to grow into other lanes? Because we talk about finishing, right? Finishing bridges is our. So you started the flipping business. You started the get across the side with the rentals, right? You secured that. And then is that when you started building these other bridges or other lanes to this bridge? Or did you do one at a time or all?
How did that look? I think if you interview a bunch of visionaries, I'm like every one of them. We all have our minds going down 100 different rabbit holes. But, the book Good to Great was a big one for me. Are you familiar with the hedgehog concept in Good to Great?
Explain it.
Well, the hedgehog concept is it's basically combining, what you're passionate about, what you're gifted at, and what can be a profitable venture. And you find you've got 3 concentric circles and you find where they overlap. And once I started analyzing every opportunity through that, I got less scatterbrained, because as a visionary, visionaries just have an idea a minute, that's just who we are. But not every one of those ideas is good. So I try to run them through that filter. And then I kind of got with our companies over the years, I've also had kind of like a leadership team where we always run through ideas through that because visionaries, like I said, have an idea a minute, but only like 1 in 100 of them is good. So you got to run it by the other people on your team or in your circle that to find out which ones are worthwhile to do. But so that's my process. But then for me, you can't be doing too many things at once. So for me, it was getting the flipping business and the rental portfolio solid, and then, adding on vertical, businesses after that. It's so easy to add on once you got one business solid, it's so easy to add on a vertically integrated business that fits with that model. And that's what I did. And it worked super well. That was my vision. I followed that for, 10 years. I'll be totally transparent with you guys here. When my vision was to have this flipping business, this education business, this brokerage, this hard money lending business, this portfolio rentals, and this club, buyers club, that all work together. And they all supported each other. And it worked great when I had an ownership interest in all of them. What I didn't realize, and I should have, it's so obvious looking back on it, but what I didn't realize is when I sold off the businesses, I thought, the partners that I sold off to would stick with that vision because it worked. But they're all visionaries and they kind of had their own ideas. So it's fallen apart to a certain extent. But, which, honestly kind of bummed me out. But, that's part of life,
So freedom has been a passion of yours, right?
Yes.
So would you say you have pretty good freedom now? Like what is it that you invest your time with now?
Yeah, I got total time and financial freedom right now. I still do what I love to do. I started following this. Have you ever guys heard of the Surrender Experiment by Mickey Singer? You heard of that book?
Yeah.
You've heard of it. It's a great book. Mickey Singer is one of I'll call him my mentors, spiritual mentors. And he's a believer, and I am also. I learned this from him, that God has a plan for us. And if we wake up every morning and just ask God, God, how do you want to use me today? And I do that every single morning. And I'm always in, and then what happens is you'll get inspirations, you get ideas, or somebody will call you or whatever. So that's the life, how I live my life today. And, and how that manifests is, I've sold off a couple of our businesses, and because I believe that was what was meant to happen. I still have ownership and partners with our Fast Funds lending business, which is an awesome hard money lending business here in the St. Louis area. As a matter of fact, we just hit $25 million on the street last Friday, so nice. We got a lot of money out there. And our club, which my other stepdaughter Rachel runs the club, and I still love working with them. So that's still fun to me, and I feel like that's still my path. I'm still inspired by that, and they still need me. So it's a mutual thing. But I've also, my wife Debbie and I, we love Sedona, Arizona. Have you guys been?
I haven't been to Sedona.
You got to go to Sedona someday, man. It's so beautiful. I love hiking. I love mountain biking. I love outdoors, and there's no better place in the world, in my opinion, to do stuff like that. So we've been doing that for a long time out there. So and it's a magical spiritual town. But we'd enjoyed going out there for a while. So I don't know, a couple of years ago we were there, and it's one of those things again. I didn't intend to buy a house there, but it just kind of happened. You know what I mean? I'm a real estate investor.
Pick this one up. Why not? Yeah.
I'm a real estate investor. I love it. And I'll tell you the story real quick. It's a long story, but I'll keep it relatively short. I was out there for 2 weeks. 1 week with some friends. It was Mike Kicko and Keith Vollmer and some other guys. And then the week after that, we do a family trip every year. So we did our family trip that year. So my wife and I just rent a house somewhere, invite all our kids and grandkids to come, and whoever shows up, shows up. So we did that for 2 weeks in a row. So first day we were in Sedona, my buddy Keith says, let's go play some pickleball. So I'd never played before. It was my first time ever. So we went to there's pickleball courts, and it's just pickup games, So we played for a couple hours. I had a great time. Keith's a great pickleball player. I was my first day. But it went great. Walking back to our car afterwards, there was this dude that we were playing with, and he parked next to us. So we were walking back to our, and we were just talking, and he said he had just recently bought a second home in Sedona, and that's where he was staying that day. And I said, "Wow, do you love it having a second home out here?" He said, "Absolutely, best decision I ever made." I said, "Who's your real estate agent? You mind sharing?" And he shared him. So I called her up. Her name was Barbara Baker. I called up Barbara and said, "Barbara, I'm in town for a couple weeks. I don't really know if I'm going to buy a house, but I might. So can you just show me what's around?" And we talked, and she showed me some houses. We got to know each other over that couple week period. And I kind of got the understanding of what I was looking for. And then one day she was showing us a house, and the listing agent happened to be there. So when we were leaving, the listing agent said, "Is this the house for you?" And I said, "No, this isn't the house for me." And he said, "Well, what is?" And I kind of described what I was looking for. It had to be at least 4 bedrooms. It had to have a pool. I'm a rehabber, so I'd love it to need work, and I like, finding something that's a little below market, that type of thing. He said, "I got the deal for you." So he jumped in a car. We drove over, we drove a few miles down the road, pull up to this house, and we pull up in the driveway, and my wife's sitting next to me, and she goes, "This is our house." We hadn't even got out of the freaking car yet. She said she could just feel it, So we go up, knock on the door, because it wasn't listed. It was an off-market deal that just the agent happened to know about. And that's the best deals, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, the bottom line is we had trouble getting into it because there's nobody home, and he didn't have the key. But a day or two later, we got into the house, and it was exactly what we were looking for. And we still own that house to today. We spent 8 months rehabbing it and got it beautiful. And I love right now taking I'm a real estate investor at heart, but I love creative things, and I love projects, and I love making something awesome that other people can share. So that's kind of our gig now is We buy houses out in Sedona, fix them up really nice, make them really nice, and rent them out. And it's working. We're having fun with it. What I'm amazed about how many people in St. Louis go to Sedona. We got 2 houses out there, and half the time it's filled with St. Louis people because I share it on Facebook, and but there's over 3 million people that go to Sedona every year, and a lot of them come from St. Louis.
So my wife loves the ocean, right?
Okay.
She likes the water. I look at Sedona as like that is a beach without the water aspect.
Yeah.
So how can I pitch that as a trip? Like, hey, I got
There's
an
a great
idea.
creek
Here's
that
a
goes
bunch
through.
of sand and dirt.
Yeah.
Let's just play in that. Like,
Do it. She'll love it. There's a beautiful river that flows through Sedona. It's called Oak Creek.
awesome.
Awesome.
I'll do that. So Bryan, you've accomplished many, many, many things in your life, right? And you had this forging period. Besides that really hot time, right, with the family, with the business, with all these things, was there anything else that you needed to go through, or was that kind of the defining moment for your future trajectory?
Well, I think that's the defining moment. And it all kind of happened at the same time with our real estate struggles. And, I think I told you this, but Debbie and I got married the same year that we started FasterHouse. So it was really intense there for several years because we had the blended family, and making sure our family was happy and healthy, and the financial troubles with our business at the same time. So it really got me focused on just being present, enjoying the day, serving people. It's life is about just being present with wherever you're at and whoever you're with, and serving them, and however you can serve them. And if you just do that, life is pretty damn easy. I feel God will inspire you on what to do next, and He's led the path for me, and so it's not that hard if you just surrender to the path that's before you and just follow it, and serve people that are in front of you. So I learned that, 10, 15 years ago, and been doing it ever since, and it's taken me where I am.
It sounds like you've had an incredibly supportive wife, Debbie.
Yes. Yeah.
It sounds like you had a little period, I call it being asleep at the wheel of life, right? Well, you were consumed with your business, right? But now that you're past that, how are you and the kids? Are relationships mended? Is there still hostility, or is that?
Everything's great. When through the blended family situation, when our kids were little, Suzanne and Rachel were the oldest, so they were not thrilled about having a stepdad at first, but so there was that period of time when they were going through high school and stuff that we had some challenges, but now they're my business partners, and I actually love it. There's nothing greater to me. Maybe there's a greater joy than this, but one of the great joys of the world is to be able to do something special with your kids. And for me, that happens to be, growing businesses with 2 of our kids. Our youngest is getting into business too in a different way out in Sedona. So that's wonderful. I love that. You get to know them so well by doing hard things together. So I don't know. I just love that aspect of it. So it was, it's been a blessing. And then we got 2 kids that aren't in the business. Like I got a son out in Philadelphia and one in Kansas City, and they're doing their own thing. They're more visionaries, or at least definitely the one in Philadelphia is. So, one thing I've learned through the years is most companies survive best with one visionary rather than multiples. And especially if one of them's your kid, he's got to venture his own path. So it's, I love having our kids in the business, but I also love that not every one of our kids needs to be in the business. They have their own path in life to follow, and we gotta honor that, however that is.
So, Bryan, if you could give advice to somebody, right, sitting in a cubicle, wondering why they're there, like, what should I do next? Do I belong here? Do I belong somewhere else? There's risk. There's the adventure, right? What's your advice to somebody stuck in that cube? Do they jump? Do they stay? What do you think?
Well, I think for me, you got to follow what you're passionate about. This is one of the things that I disagree with a lot of real estate educators. There's a lot of real estate educators out there that tell people just get into the real estate business. It's a good money maker, and even if you don't like it, you don't need to love what you do every day. I 100% disagree with that. I think you should follow your passion, and if you're passionate about something, and there's risk involved, you're passionate about. Okay, I'm going to go back to our spiritual beliefs again. You're passionate about it because God wants you to do it. He wouldn't give you that passion if He wasn't going to support you in that. So follow your passion. There might be fear involved, but you have the courage to let go of that fear and just follow it. So if you have something you're passionate about, follow that. Now, I do find a lot of people that go, I don't really know what the hell I'm passionate about. And I understand that too. So just follow the inspirations, the things that show up. Maybe you'll be offered to do something with a friend or whatever, just follow that. If you're inspired to do it in some form or fashion, follow that inspiration. But most importantly, just make sure that whatever you're doing, you're serving people and bringing value to the world. So I don't know if that answered that question very well. I don't think I did a very good job. What do you think, Kevin? What advice would you give
I thought
people?
you were on a fantastic roll. I was actually going to use that as our out because that was such good advice. And then I was like, man, that was really good. What was the question? It was about leaving
the advice for the
yeah. That's awesome. All right, let me give you another one then. I was like, I thought you had your out, so I was like, oh, that's fantastic.
You could cut it off a little short.
So let's try this one. All right, so Bryan, we are at the start of a new year,
yes.
Right? If you could give advice to these young entrepreneurs or even people growing their business in some phase of growing their business this season, what is some advice for 2025 that you could give the entrepreneurs out there?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked for the entrepreneurs. I assume most of your audience is entrepreneurs. So for the entrepreneurs out there, you guys have a passion. Entrepreneurs are doing something because they've been led that direction for some reason. Hopefully it's because you're passionate about it. So, follow that passion. 2025 is going to be a great year. It's always good, at the beginning of the year to, kind of think about what your goals are for the year or what you want to accomplish this year. I think this is a year to just go for it. I think there's a lot of optimism in the air. The last few years have been a little bit, I don't know. There's been a lot of question in the air, but I feel like there's a lot of optimism in the air this year. So I'm confident this is going to be a great year. So it's a great year to, not let your fear stop you and to just move forward and do something special this year, whatever that is. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean growing a business. That could mean growing yourself personally. It could be deepening your relationship with your wife or your family or whatever, but go for something.
That's excellent. Bryan, I want to thank you for being on today. I want to thank you for all the amazing things you've done professionally, all the work you've done. I mean, how many hundreds, if not thousands of houses you've been a part of here. But mostly, I want to say thank you for being a good role model for all real estate investors or really people especially in the St. Louis area, for doing the right thing and holding other people accountable to it. So thank you so much from all of us here, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.